Okay, so are you ready to dive into this? We're tackling Geminis today, and wow, you were not kidding with all these articles, huh? Looks like a full-on deep dive, which I'm here for.
I'm seeing what you mean. You weren't kidding.
You've got excerpts here from the Gemini Zodiac sign, complete Gemini horoscope, looks like it was just published this month. And of course, you've got your usual thing for Gemini men and women, the compatibility stuff, even some daily and weekly insights. Always good to have the latest, right?
Right.
So this article, it jumps right into it, Element, air, quality, mutable, ruler, Mercury, and right away, you see it, right? Communication, that constant need to learn, always moving and shaking. It even mentions their dates, May 21st to June 20th. But it's never that straightforward with astrology, is it?
You said it.
Yeah.
There's always way more to it than just your sun sign. But those dates, they give us a starting point.
For sure. Now, the article talks about the usual Gemini strengths, like being adaptable, quick learners, incredible communicators, which no surprise there. But like with anything, there are two sides, right? I gotta say, though, this mutable air thing has me curious. Seems a little like a contradiction, don't you think?
It's actually essential to really getting Geminis. Okay, so think about it. All air signs, they're known for their minds, right? And yeah, they're social butterflies, but mutable signs, they're all about change, adapting. Think of them like the wind that's always shifting, not like a gentle breeze.
That's a really good way to put it. The article, it mentions Geminis being kind of indecisive, maybe even a little inconsistent sometimes. Is that this whole mutable air thing in action?
Exactly. It's not that they have like a split personality or anything. It's that their minds, always going, always considering every option, different perspectives, all the what ifs. So yeah, they might seem indecisive because they're wired to embrace change and explore everything.
Okay, I can totally visualize that. Like, their minds are just always in motion, taking in new info and adapting. Speaking of things in motion, the article really emphasizes Mercury as their ruling planet. It can't just be about being chatty, though, right?
No way. There's so much more to it than that. Think about Mercury for a sec, the messenger god, right?
Yeah.
Quick-witted, all about communication and commerce, too. This is where those classic Gemini traits come from. That endless curiosity, loving to learn, and being able to process information like lightning.
Which is probably why their career paths often reflect that, huh? This article mentions writers, teachers, entrepreneurs. Sounds like they need that mental engagement to thrive.
100%. Geminis, they light up in environments where they can really think critically, communicate their ideas, and of course keep learning and evolving. A boring routine, though, that would suffocate them.
Makes total sense. There's this one line that really stuck with me. It says, Geminis often feel like their other half is missing, which, I don't know, it seems kind of deep for a sign known for being so social and outgoing.
It's actually very connected to what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, Geminis crave connection, but it runs deeper than just hanging out,
It's got to be on an intellectual level, too. This whole missing piece thing, it's not necessarily about finding a person. It's more about this constant search for knowledge, for experiences that make them feel complete.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's less about finding someone to complete them and more about constantly searching for knowledge, for those mind-blowing experiences.
Totally. Geminis are always looking for more, always exploring, pushing their own boundaries. It's that unstoppable curiosity that makes them so interesting and honestly fun to be around.
So speaking of always searching, always exploring, you included a lot about Geminis and love in this deep dive, which don't mind if I do.
Yeah.
This article's not shying away from the good stuff.
That's a good one. There's this line, and I swear it jumped right out at me. Fun and always ready for an intellectual challenge, Gemini sees love first through communication. It's like love at first word, right? Forget love at first sight.
You got it. That mental spark for Geminis, non-negotiable, is how attraction starts, how love grows. Gotta have that foundation.
And it's not like just keeping up in a conversation, The article makes it clear you need a partner who can match their energy and their intellect. Yeah, physical attraction is great and all, but that mind connection, at least as important, maybe even more.
Totally agree. Geminis need someone on their level, mentally speaking. Someone to challenge them, share that love for knowledge, for those new experiences.
Makes me think about the compatibility stuff in here. Aries, Leo, Libra, Aquarius, Sagittarius. What's the deal with those signs? What clicks, what clashes, with how a Gemini does love?
It's wild, right? So your fire signs like Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, they can match a Gemini's energy. And that enthusiasm, it's like a recipe for something exciting, unpredictable.
Okay, so you've got fireworks with the fire signs. What about the others?
Air signs, Libra, and Aquarius. They get the Gemini communication style, talking, debating, bouncing ideas around. It's that air sign connection,
Sounds like a recipe for some pretty amazing relationships. But okay, there's also this bit about Geminis making sharp turns in relationships. I'm not gonna lie, that made me nervous.
I can see why. But before we jump to conclusions, let's dig a little.
Yeah.
Is it really about being flighty, or could it be that fear of boredom, that routine that a lot of Geminis have?
Interesting. So it's less about not caring and more about not wanting to feel stuck.
Exactly. And it goes back to that duality we talked about. Even in love, they're balancing that need for excitement with wanting stability.
So then how do they find that balance? How do they figure out those two needs without, a bunch of broken hearts?
The million-dollar question.
Right.
No easy answer, unfortunately. Open communication is crucial.
Which, for a Gemini, is probably up there on the love language list, right?
Right. They need a partner who gets that. They need that mental stimulation, who's up for spontaneity. And they have to be on board with talking things out, needs and all that. But Geminis, they got to own their patterns too. Learning to say what they need directly, finding good ways to bring excitement into their life without, turning everything upside down.
That is some good advice. And it makes me wonder how that translates to work, to money, which I think is what we're getting into next, right? All right, so we talk about love, but now it's time for work and money, right? The stuff Geminis are known for. Kidding. But you did send over some interesting stuff about that.
Yeah, it should be good.
Okay, so this article, it comes right out and says it. The most suitable job for a Gemini has to be challenging to their brain. And like we were saying before, it's not just about being smart.
Nope, definitely not. It's more about that constant engagement, like you were saying, that need for their brain to be doing something. It lists some examples like traders, inventors, writers. What do you think the connection is there?
Well, they're all using their intelligence, but in these really dynamic ways, It's not just knowing stuff, it's doing something with it, pushing those limits, always exploring.
Exactly. And for a Gemini, that can look a lot of different ways. A fast-paced job, or maybe a job that's more traditional, but they find ways to challenge themselves.
Right, makes sense. So how does a Gemini even know if a job is actually using that need for their brain to be stimulated, or if it's like, I don't know, disguised boredom? Because like any job, even a super exciting one, has its moments, right?
Oh, totally. That's something Geminis really deal with. I think it boils down to, are they growing in that job, learning new things, using their creativity and feeling challenged?
Yeah, and those are some questions to ask. Okay, let's talk about money. The article talks about this struggle between being practical and, well, enjoying life. As someone who might enjoy a little treat now and then, I can relate. Even if I wasn't, whatever sign I am.
You and everyone, right.
Yeah.
But with Geminis, it goes back to that duality. They're always being pulled in these different directions. Yeah, they like to enjoy themselves, but they get that security is important too.
Sounds like a balancing act. How do they make it work?
Maybe it's about looking at budgeting differently. Not as a restriction, but as a way to do both. Save some, spend some on what they love.
So it's more like mindful spending, making sure it lines up with what they want, like security, but also those experiences.
That's it. And this ties back into their careers too. A side hustle. It might not be just for the money. It could be an outlet for their creativity, something they're passionate about, keeps their mind going, even outside of work.
That's so smart. It just shows how it's all linked. Learning, career, money, it all comes from that same Gemini energy. Before we wrap up this deep dive, though, we got to talk about those notes you sent over about the differences between Gemini men and women. Is there even a difference?
It's kind of tricky, right? To say, oh, well, men are this way and women are that way. But the article does mention some interesting things. For example, it says Gemini men, they need freedom and space. And then it says Gemini women are more likely to run off into a carefree love story.
Okay, on the surface, those do seem a little stereotypical, right?
Yeah.
What do you think's really going on there?
Maybe it's worth thinking about, how do societal expectations play into it? Do we, even without realizing it, encourage Gemini men to be more communicative, more social? And then with Gemini women, do they feel pressure to be more, grounded, like the responsible ones?
Wow, that is definitely something to think about. So not that Gemini men and women are totally different at their core, but that maybe the way they express those Gemini qualities is shaped by, well, life, experiences, societal stuff, all that.
Exactly. There's so many things to think about. I think it's interesting to kind of see this through your own lens. Yeah. As you're interacting with Geminis, do those descriptions fit with what you've seen? What other things have you noticed about how the Gemini men and women in your life, how they handle things like love, work, all of it?
Such a great point. It reminds us that astrology, it's really a tool for getting to know ourselves and the people around us better on a deeper level. And you know what? One last thing. All this awesome info we talked about, it's all coming from Western astrology. Have you ever thought about what Eastern astrology would say about Geminis? Like the Chinese Zodiac, it can give us a whole new perspective. But for today, I think we covered a lot. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. And until next time, keep those stars aligned.